welcome everyone. This is the one of the final breakout sessions. I guess we have a competitive breakout session going on in Narcissus, but who would want to go to that? So if you thought if you're not expecting to be in Mobilizing the Enterprise, now is your chance to leave, as they always say on the planes. If you're not expecting to go to Orlando, you shouldn't be on this plane. And no one ever says they weren't expecting to go to Orlando, unless they were going to somewhere else, I guess. But anyway, so welcome to the final session. We just got 40 minutes or so live here, and then we're all going to go back over to the main tent where we've got our final keynote. So thanks for bearing with us and coming over. I know it's a lot of walking backwards and forwards. I've done it 4 times. It's good for you, I was told by the organizer of the event. We shall allow our customers to become fit as we go through this session. And I'm joined on stage here by 3 expert and illustrious speakers, by Kevin Wrenn from Fujitsu America. Kevin, please, you can introduce yourself when you speak in a few minutes. By John-Marc Clark from Citrix is joining us, and by Christopher McClendon, beautiful, an excellent Scottish last name. We tried to get other speakers with a muck in their name as well, but apparently Citrix and Fujitsu couldn't find any more, but that's okay. At least we've got 2 Scots on the stage. Neither of us will speak with a Scottish accent. None of us will do that. We'll stick with our standard stories, and we're going to take you through Fujitsu's Mobilizing the Enterprise story. We're actually going to do a little bit of a tag team up here, so hopefully that's going to work for everyone. We've rehearsed the timing and the handoff to a relay team level of excellence. John-Marc says he's never dropped the baton in his life, so we're all expecting him to fumble as the mic is handed over from place to place, but that should be, I think that should work very, very well. So let me kick off. I get the honor this time of not just doing a little bit of emceeing, I actually get to talk a little about my topic as well. As you heard, I think Jake Smith, from Intel said mobilizing the enterprise was perhaps one of the first areas that a business could focus upon in a digital transformation journey. I'm pretty sure it was Jake that said that. Certainly one of the panelists talked about that, and I was gratified to hear that, considering we have an entire session on mobilization. And you should be, I think, overjoyed to see some of the different, quite wide range of different areas of mobilization that we get to here at Fujitsu, and with some of our partners, a couple of which from Citrix and Microsoft are on stage with us. And I think you'll be quite surprised at some of the depth of business we get into. And I know my fellow panelists have some great examples of customer stories. Thank God they're nodding. Customer stories that they're going to talk to you about as well. No, Richard, we weren't going to mention any customers. So mobility, number one, an absolutely key part of digital transformation. And I think we've seen a real mind shift over the last years to this so-called new mobile paradigm. There are some great stats here on the board, and we are all users of mobile and tablet devices. I can see quite a number of them already in use here in the audience. Your faces are glowing blue, ladies and gentlemen, so it's very easy to see who in fact is tweeting excellent articles about our session, doing their email, calling up their Facebook, even having a look online. I see Brian's doing this right down the front. He's actually looking at a video of someone delivering something to his house right now, just like in the ad. I'm sure that's actually what's going on there. We've all seen this usage. We know our own users, our own employees in many cases, are also bringing these devices into the workplace, and you have a choice of either embracing, as an IT department or a business, either embracing the fact that many folks have mobile devices with them, or attempting to deny the fact and keep them going on their own platform. And Microsoft, Citrix, and Kevin, we're all going to talk a little bit about that and the implications of the possibility of enhancing and using the technologies. But that's not the only change that's happened. Also, many of ourselves and our users are also used to applications now working in a mobile way. You're used to a user experience on a mobile device. And I know I've spoken to a couple of you already about this situation where one of the death knells of a mobile application we saw in the very early days was the command from the business, take application 7 and make it work on a mobile phone. And that's the level of interaction they did. What do you think IT did? They took application 7 and they put it on a mobile phone with no change. And consequently, no one liked it. But doesn't it have little swipey things and come? No, it didn't have any of that. It was just a port of the classic desktop application, and that is not necessarily a great way of fixing the user experience. So I've been with a couple of customers recently, and their IT departments have now said to the business, they've given a command to the business user, if you come to me again with a request to mobilize any application, I will ask you who your user experience expert is in your business, not in my IT department. You, the business user, have to actually find someone who can understand enough about what the key parts of the application were, ask the users some questions about what experience they wanted, and then you can come to me and tell me in IT how I'm going to implement that application for you. Of course, as many of us know, you don't always need to go to your own IT department to do that. There are many third-party companies are willing to come in and help mobilize your application separate from IT, but that's IT's own issue they've got to deal with as well. But certainly that ability, or that request, excuse me, to get an application up and running and get a user experience expert on board, that isn't only the problem of IT. That's a business issue, and the business rules are very, very important. Of course, we also not only face usage models, we also face issues of globality. We expect, is there such a word as globality?
For you.
There isn't anymore. Apparently, we've lost that. I'm English, I rule the language, therefore we can now define globality as a valid word. That is now a good one. But the ability to communicate and collaborate globally around the world, that's a requirement of many, many enterprises. And of course, we're looking for talented people pretty much anywhere. So put a job requisition out, global company number 3, looking for someone to run their marketing organization. They would expect now to hire that person anywhere in the world, no matter where they're located. We're certainly seeing that transformation in our industry in America as more and more people are working from home or from a remote office, and less people coming into a headquarter location. That means our own businesses and our own IT departments have to be able to manage that situation, have mobile device services, mobile management services, and the devices themselves able to work pretty much anywhere in the world. So we end up looking very closely, I think, at an approach to mobile IT where we give both the devices and experiences that users really want, that user experience that I was talking about earlier, but with the security features, the enterprise-grade security features that businesses need to enable them to hire those people. And with that, I believe, if I am correct, Kevin, you can press your next button because it's a long build slide. Away you go.
No problem. Thank you, Richard. Thank you for taking a few minutes on my first slide. I appreciate that. I'm used to following Richard, so I'm really good at this. I've been doing it for about 15 years. Thank you, Richard.
You
I love
lead,
it.
you never follow.
So you heard a little bit about how Richard talked about, the human-centric approach. Well, I'm Kevin Wrenn. I run the client computing device business here at Fujitsu, and we've been doing this, believe it or not, for a long time. We're about, Jennifer, I believe, on probably our 50th generation of tablets. And so that's when I say we know what users like. This isn't a slide we just put up for human-centric IT. We've been human-centric for a long time. We understand enterprise grade, we understand applications and use cases, and all the partners that we've been dealing with over the years also understand that very well. So we're not out trying to sell high volume commodity devices. We're actually trying to solve a business problem for a customer. Oh, wrong button. There we go. Yeah, this one. So while the bubble boxes come up, so what's kind of driving us, right? The market's changing with digital business, right? You got applications, you have handwriting, right? Handwriting recognition, very key, which is why we're focused on tablets. In education today, they can't survive without handwriting recognition, right? Many businesses are trying to move manual processes to forms-based, right? Again, you need that ability for handwriting recognition and touch, right? When you talk about, we have a multi-generational workforce, right? So when you go out there, you got people from the ripe old age of their 50s to the young ripe old age of their 20s, right? And so how do you take that into account? And I think the greatest example I can give you is keyboards. You can't get rid of keyboards yet, even though we want to. It's going to take as long to get rid of a keyboard as it took to get rid of a floppy drive. So for those of us in the room that remember that, I think it'll take that long, right? But look how long did it take Bo to get rid of those floppy drives? A long time. So I just think that's what I mean by multi-generational, activities. And, we talked earlier about, the consumerization of IT. Well, from my perspective, what I see is it's not consumerization, it's just now enterprise people want the ability to support their users like they're a consumer, because that line is getting pretty gray and it almost doesn't exist anymore. So when you talk about now how does it impact people, we're heavy into healthcare, manufacturing, education, transportation, but how are these devices going to come together, right? IoT, like we heard a lot about today. How are they going to integrate with the devices? I think one of the things that we heard this morning was you don't necessarily want to blow up everything you're doing, right? It is legacy, that's for sure, but there's a value there. And I like that analog to digital. I think that's a really good example of we got to have devices that support the analog while we transition to the digital. And we have to understand which industries are ready to make those moves and which industries are not ready to make those moves. Because as we've all seen, you may have an application, but it may be hard to break some of that infrastructure up. However, you got to be prepared on the front end with your new technology, but also be able to support on the back end. So I thought that was a really good kind of case that we touched on. The ultimate objectives now in the business needs, and you go talk to the business users, how do we enable a flexible workforce? So one of the things we were talking about, take a 2-in-1 platform. Think about a 2-in-1 platform, for those of you who may or may not know, is the 2-in-1s that come apart now versus the swivels. Think about if you had one device across guys that worked in the warehouse, guys that worked in the office, guys that worked everywhere, where you could just come back, dock it on your desk, use it as your mainstream device. When you go to a meeting, you could take it out. The guys in the warehouse could put a case around it, and they could use it for their application. I think that's what 2-in-1 devices begin to get us to. And I think that's an area of, how do we enable flexible working? And then your costs for managing that back end become much simplified, right? And so I think that's another, right? Again, also need to keep the data safe. So if you're working on one platform, I think it gives you that ability. It delivers some standardization, as I kind of touch on there. And I think, the whole idea is how do we talk to the business user that's trying to solve a problem today and really get them to think about not only how do they support what they have, but also get them to understand what are they going to need a year from now or 2 years from now or 3 years from now. And that's what we try to help them with. So when I go back earlier to what I said, that's why I don't just sell them a device, because it's not about that device. And the kind of the comment I always make to a customer, I said, I'm not here to sell you a piece of hardware. I'm here to help you solve a problem, so you invite me back to solve the next problem. So last thing I want to share with you is here's a recent case study for one of our customers who I think, went through a digital transformation because they took a paper process and they moved it to an electronic forms process. Right, and it's with Navy recruiting, and this is a very large project to roll out across all of their regional areas where they're actually going to sign people up for the Navy. Well, just think about what we talked about this morning and through this afternoon. What this does when all of a sudden you got a device in your hand and you have access to all the data. So one thing is you can immediately sign them up anywhere you are. So if you now meet someone somewhere else or any different event, it's there. You can also have the data stored up on the cloud, right? So if somebody else picks it up, they have access to all that data, right? None of that you've had before. So you talk about transforming, a process. This is, I think, a great example of why I put it up here. Still providing all the security, right? Still just enhances the whole thing. And by the way, it makes the whole experience better. Because the better experience, the better success you'll have at recruiting. So I'm going to turn it over here to John-Marc from Citrix.
Thank you. Notice the elegant baton handoff.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
We practiced this for 2 hours last night.
Hi, everyone. My name is John-Marc Clark. I manage and direct the global alliance between Citrix and Fujitsu. And first of all, I want to say thank you to Fujitsu, to all of you, to Richard for inviting Citrix to participate, sponsor the event. We are a very strong partner. In fact, on a global level, Fujitsu is Citrix's #1 partner in the world. So we have over 10,000 partners in our partner ecosystem. That's primarily how we go to market. So that's pretty amazing accolade. And that's based on total bookings with Fujitsu. It's based on the number of technically trained and enabled Fujitsu personnel that hold Citrix technical certifications. And it's also based on the global scope of our business together. So specifically, the numbers of countries where we transact is well above 30 worldwide. So I was asked to come up and just give a little bit of insight. I travel a lot for Citrix. And so this World Tour event is, I believe, the first one in the Americas?
Yes, it is.
And so I'm kind of a World Tour groupie. Yes, it's true. I used to follow the Dead, and now I'm following Fujitsu on their World Tour. So I've actually presented at World Tour events in Australia, in Ireland, in Spain, and so it just kind of shows the global reach of Fujitsu. And I thought with that in mind, I'd just share some customer stories of engagements where Citrix and Fujitsu have teamed to give you like a real-life view into how some companies have mobilized their enterprise utilizing Fujitsu with Citrix helping. So first thing, though, I want to plant, and this is the main idea of the slide, is if you are an organization, and the person from I believe it was the Canadian Beer Company, asked Dr. Rieger during the session, well, how should we approach this? Well, the most important thing to do first is to not get swept away by digital business or mobilizing the enterprise, but rather just start very commonsensically. Inventory the potential benefits and projects associated with mobilizing your enterprise or your public organization. So to me, that's a whiteboard session. That's a business conversation. It's a commonsensical conversation. So if we look at this slide, which these were just several Fujitsu slides that Richard said, hey, John-Marc, can you come up and present? And sure. So, create new customer channels and enhance customer interactions. Redefine business processes by allowing mobile access to information. So this makes me think of a use case in the UK with the Mercedes-Benz dealer network. So what they have there was obviously a high-end product, and historically you'd have to actually go into a small office and sit with the salesperson and actually talk about the car and configure it. Well, utilizing Fujitsu's Managed Mobile solution, which is based on Citrix Zen Mobile, now what happens is the consultancy and the customer service levels far improve because the Mercedes-Benz dealer network salesperson can literally take a mobile tablet and go and accompany the person to the car and actually talk to them about what they want and build the car according to their preferences. So it's resulted in an expansion of business, a heightened level of customer service. Another example would be around just lowering overall cost. And that one would be Qantas, Australia's one of the biggest brands in Australia, a national airline. So in that case, what happened was they inventoried all the costs associated with flying a plane. And what they found was the amount of paper that was being brought onto the plane related to flight manuals, ordering food and drinks in first class or through the entire cabin was actually amounting to a lot of weight, which was translating into excess fuel cost. And so they wanted to actually find out how can we lower that. Well, by mobilizing those processes, again, using Fujitsu and Managed Mobile, they eliminated those pounds of weight, which brought down the cost of transportation. And I was flying on a flight not that long ago, and sure enough, someone came right through business class with a mobile device, and what I found was that the customer service experience also went up. Another example is with, it's a company, organization. It's the largest public employment organization in Europe. It's Bundesagentur für Arbeit, which is the federal German employment agency. And with the massive influx of immigrants that have come into Germany from Syria, these brick and mortar employment agencies that were spread out all over Germany didn't match with where the refugee camps have been set up. And there was no way that they were going to get 1 million refugees processed and going to brick and mortar employment agencies. So what the Federal German Employment Agency has done, thanks to the expertise of Fujitsu and working with Citrix, has been to virtualize the applications that were historically tied to a brick and mortar arrangement and mobilize those applications. So now the agency is able to go out and actually interact with that family from Aleppo, Syria, and try and help them to get relocated. Critically important. And then the final one that I'll mention, so you were worried you weren't going to hear customer stories from the panelists.
I wasn't actually worried at all.
So the fourth one that I thought would be interesting to just share with you is related to a healthcare organization in Finland called Korea. And Korea is one of the most important public healthcare organizations in Finland. There are I think about 3 million people in Finland. And Korea gets a finite amount of funds from the government every year, and so they have no additional way to generate those funds because it's a public service to receive health care. And they specialize in healthcare services for the mentally disabled. So what Korea was forced with was, how do we get the most value and provide the greatest level of service to these people who are really in need with a finite budget? So what they did was they started to mobilize all of their services. Doctors have found that they can spend more time with patients, caring for the patients rather than processing information. And now what they're also doing is for some of the patients who are actually homebound, they can actually bring the service to the patient. So very humanitarian, and like earlier today, this notion of human-centric computing and making the world a better place. I mean, that when the gentleman came and spoke at our Synergy event, it was just really a moving story, right? So mobilizing the enterprise. Remember, focus on the practical and the pragmatic. What do you want to do? Prioritize it, and then don't try and boil the ocean. Start with the low-hanging fruit and move on from there. And obviously, there's ROI around it. And, the ROI can come, and I'll talk about different forms of ROI. So it doesn't just come in terms of increased productivity through mobility, but it also comes from increased ROI in terms of the different user groups. So when you're mobilizing, you have to actually think about the different perspectives of mobilizing. And so this one, I'll just tell you the story of Citrix. And the use case is a BYOD program and a flex working program that we implemented. We're just right down the road, down the turnpike, a couple hundred miles in Fort Lauderdale. We're the biggest software company in Florida, one of the biggest software companies in the world, about 10,000 employees. And what was happening from an employee perspective was that Citrix was requiring employees to come into work, and as those employees came into work, we were starting to, from a employee perspective, the productivity wasn't there. Why? Have you ever been on Highway 95 coming up from Miami during rush hour or the other way? So all sorts of just basic issues confronted employees. Also, work-life balance wasn't being maximized. So what the company decided to do was implement a BYOD program. So every employee can apply for BYOD. They receive a $2,100 stipend, and they can go out and buy whatever device they want. All right? And it's literally just paid out like part of their paycheck, and they can go out and buy whatever. So right here in the front, I have an iPhone, and then I have a Fujitsu 2-in-1 device, which I love.
Good job.
Is that a good plug?
Which I love.
And the great thing is that, with Citrix, I can get to my Windows apps from my iPhone, and I can leave my laptop or 2-in-1 device when I don't need it, but I've got the flexibility to choose and use whatever I want. Well, guess what that does for employees? We have a big influx of very young millennials coming into Citrix, and that's how they want to work. They don't want to be told, standard issue laptop, you've got to buy this. So it's elevated loyalty and employee retention. From a line of business perspective, obviously that's one of the drivers. Hey, we want our employees to be happy, but we also want to attract the top talent. But at the end of the day, what do they want? Does work shifting and flex working mean that you work less? I can tell you it certainly does not. It means you work whenever you need to work, which tends to mean that because you're actually working and you're empowered and thankful that you go see your daughter's tennis match, that you'll do that work in the evening. And I mean, I work all the time, but I'll take time off and go for a run. So that's what line of business leaders want. They want greater productivity from the workforce, and they want collaboration. And this is a great way Mobilizing the Enterprise has driven it within Citrix. Another thing that they actually want to do is they want to lower costs. So at Citrix, when we went to this BYOD program, guess what we didn't do? We didn't build that additional physical campus building. Instead, what we did is we went to actually open workspaces. And so you can come, if anyone is in Florida or anyone here wants to come visit Citrix, please come up to me afterwards and I'll be happy to give you my card, give you a tour of our offices. You come to our offices now and you might see somebody watching the European Championship football league game on the 4th floor and playing pool while someone's sitting in a quiet chair actually working. Or someone's in the quiet library next to that. Or someone's taken a private office space for a conference call. And so that breaking down of this physical linkage between kind of title and office and then cube is another thing that has really engendered a lot of positive response. And I mean, I'm almost 50, and so I didn't think of myself as fighting something, but I was against this initially. And actually now I've just seen the benefits of it. And so finally, IT leaders. So I sit on the same floor as some of our security architects and security team. And obviously, what are they concerned about? They want to prevent security leakage. They want to prevent any type of privacy issues. They want to demonstrate compliance and governance. And so when you go to this mobilized model, you can really actually, using the right architecture, which Fujitsu can really help to implement, you can guarantee that you maintain a high level of security posture, and that's critical. Just driving up on the turnpike, I saw Wells Fargo had a big sign on the side, and they had a mobile device on it, and it had Wells Fargo brand, and it had 2 words, security and convenience. So fine, we're going to give end users a convenience, but we're not going to compromise the security. So this slide builds out, and it's, I believe, intended to appear as complicated as possible.
That's right.
So it's supposed to be so daunting you just raise a white flag. And you know, the reality is that when you approach a Mobilizing the Enterprise project, you have to do it from the user perspective first. And what I mean by that is you have to actually understand that there's so many different strata that are touched when you mobilize the enterprise that if you're trying to build out a mobilized infrastructure that is actually optimized for every one of these different strata, user profile, applications, device type, network, policies, there's no way you can hard code it. You cannot hardwire it, just like the whole breakdown of the hardwired full client PC has happened when you see that through virtualization. So the message of this slide is you need to have a user-first approach, but the architectural model that you take also has to be user-centric from an IT perspective. So you can think of an app store model. You want your employees to be able to get to their applications in a self-service manner. You want your employees to actually have as little security exposure as possible on their mobile devices, right? So you need to centralize, you need to virtualize, you need to optimize all of that, right? And again, Fujitsu has well over 2,000 technical certifications on Citrix worldwide held by their engineering team. So let me just finish this up before I hand it to Kevin by saying we have over 4,000 joint customers around the world with Fujitsu. Many of the world's largest and most complex desktop virtualization, mobility, networking deployments are done with Fujitsu at major private and public organizations. So they have years of experience in working with Citrix. Additionally, in terms of experience, and a metric is there are well over 500,000 virtualized endpoints that are hosted and managed by Fujitsu. And on the mobile side too, in terms of cloud mobile service provision, Fujitsu is Citrix #1 in the world mobility service provider with well over 50 customers around the world. I mentioned a few of them doing incredible things using what's called Managed Mobile, which is part of Fujitsu's global delivery and user services offerings. So it's a great partnership, and like Fujitsu, what Citrix is good at, and it's come up a lot today, which is good to hear, is an organization's IT department is like an archaeological dig. You have old apps and infrastructure, you have what's used today, and you have what's coming. And so what Citrix is great at is providing a hybrid IT balanced environment that allows you to manage what you have today and what you've acquired in the past and move forward. And that's what Fujitsu also is excellent at implementing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John-Marc.
So I'm going to skip ahead because I got to give Christopher some time, and no problem there. I'm happy to do that. But as a product guy, I have to speak for a couple of minutes about just kind of our product strategy approach because I think it's important. So, when you look at our portfolio, we support everything from a rugged tablet all the way up to clamshells. But, if you look at rugged tablets, regular tablets, 2-in-1s, convertibles, and things that we think about, right, that are important to users is optimized battery life. So what that means is, how can a student use it in a classroom for a day? Can a nurse complete a shift in a hospital? So that's what we mean. That's what optimized battery life means to me, not a test off the street of, oh, you passed this battery test for 8 hours. And I think going back to what the users look for and what we provide is we can also go in and help a customer in the MFI build that he's doing to make sure that for his application, he's maximizing these benefits. And the last one I'll kind of talk about is, when you look at performance is also very important, right, to our users, because if the performance doesn't work and they can't see enough patients or they can't process enough claims or they can't get through their classroom of 45 minutes, then it really doesn't matter. So we think about that when we're developing the devices. So I just want to talk a couple of quick ones about, this is kind of a new add to our portfolio, our R726 on the left-hand side. This is our office tablet. So we have a rugged tablet, we have a standard 2-in-1, we have an office tablet. So again, if you have office workers that really want some flexibility and want to move around or want to work from home or work in anywhere, again, they can plug this into their existing framework and use it and get everything they need. Then they step out to either meet with a customer or go to a meeting, and they still have everything they need, right? And then it starts to it still gives you all the flexibility, it gives you all the security and everything else you need, but it also gives you the ability to now provide something that's more office-like. Okay, and so now we offer everything right up the spectrum from a standard tablet to an office tablet to a 2-in-1, and we're just going to continue because this market, as it continues to expand, all right, one size is not going to fit all. And I think that's but as I said earlier, if you put a case around one of these, all of a sudden you might get something that's semi-rugged, so at least you can support multiple people within your organization. So I just want to talk one last about Klein Independent School District out of Houston, Texas. If you know, they're the oldest one-to-one initiative in the state of Texas and the largest. And they have been using our product. We did a rollout a couple of years ago for about 7,000 students, and we just recently did a rollout for about 3,000 teachers. And I want to go back to something we said earlier today. The reason why they came back to Fujitsu was they said the experience they had with the students was significantly better than what they had experienced in previous generations. And it doesn't matter anymore about whose device it was, because it's not about that. It's about the experience for the students and the teachers. And the teachers were so vocal that they came back and said, in this next round, and we expand, now this next one's expanding across multiple high schools. But these are students that use these devices every day and have no books and no paper. So you gotta have reliability, you gotta have battery life, but I just want you to know how we at Fujitsu think about this. Yeah, we're hardware people, but you know what? We're always trying to think about the next generation, the next application, and where it's going, while also trying to lay in all the new technology. So with that, I'll turn it over to Christopher, and we'll go from there.
Didn't you want to talk about that?
How are we doing on time?
You're perfect.
Good? Okay. All right, well, that's a tough act to follow there. All right. So first of all, I want to say thank you. I was actually looking, and I didn't realize how far back our relationship went with Fujitsu, and the fact that Fujitsu actually made one of the first PCs in, I think it was 95, around that time. And I'm actually going to use my phone here because I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing both with Fujitsu and Citrix, and what it really means as far as how we look at digital transformation and what's happening in industry and the mobile use cases. So for the longest time, and I'm going to actually ask a question, how many of you have more than a couple of devices with you in Orlando? Okay, so quite a few, yeah. Yeah, and I was actually watching a Fujitsu video from last year, and there was a survey that was done. It was one of the Fujitsu forums, and the question was asked, and I think the record in the room was one person had 14 devices.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, and I guess that's changed because somebody now, I guess they bought another device while they were traveling, and they said it was 15, but you know, when we think about it, so I guess one other question, how many of you have a device that you're carrying that you use for work that work did not buy for you? Okay, so quite a few. So the BYOD trend that we've talked a lot about. And I guess final question, how many of you wish you just had one device? Okay, yeah, so some of you like to carry the baggage, but so I'm a retail guy. I've been in the retail industry for better than 15 years, and I've watched the transformations in retail. I've actually spent the last few years focusing on healthcare. Worked a long time with Fujitsu transaction systems, and if you've been in this industry a long time, we've gone from really big systems that were anchored to desk to the idea of mobile. And for 5 years, I actually ran our engineering teams for the Microsoft Store, and we used to joke when we first went mobile, and the productivity that we got by going mobile, especially around peak selling season, we used to joke that you had to have a strong right bicep, because our idea of mobile was about 4 or 5 pounds, but it really got people out from behind the desk, and we were able to satisfy about 3 times the demand in the store during the fall and Christmas times than we did when we had traditional point of sale. And that's changed a lot. And in fact, I was, here's my plug, so the T936.
Oh,
is that
very
right?
good.
Yes, very good, very good. So when we look at 2-in-1s, if you follow what's happened just in the last year, and for those of you that follow Microsoft, we're a very different company than we were 2 years ago. We've done some amazing things with Citrix the last couple of years. The work in our cloud, the work that Citrix is doing in our cloud and for connecting devices to the cloud. But this idea of having devices that people carry around that are their own devices while preventing data leakage, and what we're doing around that and the technology innovations that are happening. Our Windows 10, and a lot of people look at Windows 10 as just the next version of Windows, is the last version of Windows that you would upgrade to. So how many of you are actually running Windows 7 on a device still? So quite a few, okay. How many of you have upgraded to Windows 10? And how many of you had a problem upgrading to Windows 10? Okay, so 1. Okay, so that's an important trend, because in the last 10 months, there's 270 million Windows 10 devices that are out there running now. Most of those were upgrades, okay? So we went from 0 to 270 million in about 10 months. And if you look at, we have an anniversary edition that's coming out this summer, which is focused on the enterprise, which is focused on this idea of mobilizing the enterprise. The expectation is that we will quickly go from the version you're on now to what we call continuous innovation, that it won't be a Windows 10.1, it won't be a 10.2, it won't be a Windows 11. We're just slipstreaming in these enhancements, so going forward, it'll just be Windows, okay? Which for IT, we've been a major barrier to IT and the business, even though we've been an enabler. But looking at healthcare, I've got 2 major healthcare accounts. One of them is the largest Medicare provider in the country. And they have applications that they're running still that are almost 15 years old in the hospital simply because they can't get on a newer version of Windows with those applications. And that's an environment that we created. We can't do that moving forward as we look at Mobilizing the enterprise. So if we look at the 2-in-1 market, and the Fujitsu device is an excellent example, 2-in-1s were up 85% last year in total units shipped. In the first quarter of this year, tablet sales are down 15%. Okay, so that's an important trend, and it's expected that by 2019, we're going to more than triple the number of 2-in-1s that are in the market. Okay, and I think what you would appreciate there is a tablet has limited utility, especially when you transition from, as an example, a nurse behind a desk working, going into a room with a patient, okay? That nurse can't carry 2 devices. They're going to carry 1 device, and if you look at most of my healthcare accounts, most of them are carrying around 4- and 5-pound laptops, okay? So there's a trend there. The other one is this idea of continuum. Have any of you heard of continuum? Okay. So this device that I have here, I can use as a desktop replacement as well. There's a Citrix receiver for this device, so I can take this phone, sit down at a desk, plug a cable into the bottom, and I have a full PC environment hosted out of the cloud, running on Citrix. And our strategy there is that within the next 2 years, we will see a trend of, instead of carrying around, 14 devices, okay, we'll be able to truly get to 1 device for many scenarios, and the 2-in-1 we expect will overtake the tablet market by 2019, okay? All right, so finally, and I guess this is my, this is my swan slide. So in closing, when you think about the amount of digital transformation that's occurring, and I've been doing this for a while, there was a statement made in the session this morning, or I think it was right after lunch, that for the first time we really expect that we're at a tipping point where technology truly will be able to push us over more of a plateau of expectations and more to delivery, and that technology has caught up with business, and the business has an opportunity to take advantage of this digital transformation around 2-in-1s and mobile devices, and hopefully we'll take about, 7 kilos off people's backs going forward. So, all right, and with that, I'm going to give it back.
Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Very good. Very good. We'll just wrap up straight away, and maybe we've got a chance for some questions. If we don't have time for questions, of course, anyone free to come to the front, chat to any of the presenters before we go back. We don't think, not just the panelists think we're good and customers, some of the analysts think we're good chaps as well. Here's good old Forrester talking about us as a global leader. We've done some great work over at BAT, at British American Tobacco, where we provided them with a global solution across a number of different global delivery centers, 35,000 users, as it says, with 14 or so different languages. I'm never sure why we say or so. It's like, can we not count the number of languages? Apparently people speak with different dialects, so it depends what you mean. But a large number of different languages and a huge number of trouble tickets coming through the BAT system per month. And that story there is really to talk about what I think Alex Bazin or maybe John talked about on the panel, all around trying to de-risk the journey to digital transformation. We've done this with a number of other customers. We hope we can share some of that experience with you as well and help to de-risk that. But in summary, on my final slide, I think what everyone said, adopt a user-first strategy to begin with, engage with your users, do your user experience analysis and profiling, as they call it, here in the slide deck. Look at your tablet or 2-in-1 device to maximize that productivity. Embrace different work styles, such as bring your own device that John-Marc talked about earlier and other different workflows. Embrace that in your environment. Move towards that modern mobile workplace as we do with our workplace as a service. And then, of course, we can actually demonstrate this live to you if you're interested. Go into the expo hall, talk to some of the experts who are in there. Of course, call them up later and have margaritas if you prefer at 4:15 rather than doing it right now. But thank you so much. That's our final slide. If there are any questions, because we've run right out of time, please come up and chat to the panelists. Otherwise, we will see you back in the main room at 4:15, ladies and gents. Thank you very much.